Okay, now I can't speak for every decade because I was born in 87 and I was just a child in the 90s. And that's not to say that the decade as a whole was perfect because we all know that every decade isn't. Obviously, yes, people are always happy and sad in every decade, but I can definitely say that the world was more lively than now. I personally think people were generally happier in the 90s. It was a better time economically, politically, in general, at least in terms of geopolitics with technology enhancing extremely well and entertainment being at its peak. Back then, it literally felt like you could get away with almost anything on the television and barely anyone made a big deal about it. It was definitely a much more carefree time, and I honestly feel like we had more common sense back then. The worst we had to deal with was a president getting a blowjob, not impending climate doom, and the prospect of never being able to retire. People didn't accuse any and everyone of racism and bigotry. People were just more wholesome and got along with each other. Now, since the left has divided the country along with racial and political lines, we are now wearing with each other. I was just talking to my fiance about how the 90s was the last little age of innocence for the world. Hell, crime was starting to go down in the 90s. I feel like 9/11 in 2001 was really the beginning of the downturn. The 90s, though, although it was kind of weirdly awkward, it was kind of like society was just trying to figure itself out and try a bunch of new things. Or maybe I'm just projecting because I was a kid during that time, so I may have a bit of a distorted view on this. But really, though, the concerns of the decade pale in comparison with what's going on these days. But what do you think? Am I right or am I right?